today's episode of Data for All, Data in Nutrition. Welcome to the Data for All podcast. I'm Charlie Yielding.
And I'm Charlie Apigian, where we want to empower you to think different with data.
In today's podcast, we're excited to talk about one of our favorite subjects, nutrition.
Yeah, and as you know, Charlie, we always like to talk about productivity and our personal wellness. And the more I learn about nutrition, to be honest, the more I get confused.
Well, that's why we decided to bring in an expert today to talk to us about it. And her name is Sheri Traxler.
Yes, and Sheri, and I was about ready to read her whole list of credentials, but I will screw up the ACE Certified Personal Trainer. Ooh, I did it. And the AASDN Nutrition Specialist and Certified Intuitive Eating Counselor. Did you hear that one, Charlie?
Yeah, but she also has a master's degree in health promotion.
Yeah, and the part that we have really thought was most intriguing is, Sheri, you're one of those things that we like to call a unicorn, and that means that you knew at a very early age that you wanted to do this for a living.
Yes, I did.
That's right. And so, Sheri, we were supposed to throw it back over to Charlie.
No, that sounded like it was for her.
I know. And Sheri, so you knew from an early age that you wanted to help people get well. Mm-hmm. And here you are today. Mm-hmm. That's what you do. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay, so who I am from as far as riffing on how I got into this, all that. When I was a kindergartner, I wanted to be a maid. Mm-hmm. And it was like, yeah, that's not going to be a real fulfilling career for me. For some people, it's amazing. But by third grade, I knew my mom always kept saying she noticed my bent. That's just an amazing thing that she would do. And she was like, do you want to be a nurse? And I was like, no, I don't really want to be a nurse. Because in my mind, nurses just help. And at that time, it was pretty true, actually, that nurses mostly focused on helping people get well, get over illness. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to help people stay well. And you could either be a sports dietitian. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to work with athletes. My brother loves working with his athletes. He's a strength coach at Vanderbilt Vanderbilt University. And I didn't want that. I didn't want to be a sports psychologist. I just wanted to work with those busy professionals, those people running their lives, wanting to really be productive, as you were just talking about, Charlie, and to succeed. Yeah. But there's something in their wellness that's holding them back from that. They don't have enough energy, things like that. Mm-hmm. And so I just kept noticing how I was drawn to people who, man, they were successful in so many things, but they could be even more so if they felt great and were taking care of themselves. So I chased that all through. It didn't even pop up as an alternative in career until in my mother's high school English class. She was my high school English teacher. Mm-hmm. And we did these career papers, which a lot of juniors in high school do a research paper on careers. And this thing called exercise physiology popped up. And I went, that is what God put me on this earth to do. Mm-hmm. So there were only, I think, 2 programs in Tennessee that even had that at the time, Belmont being one of them. Mm-hmm. So Belmont University was where I landed.
Yay.
Yep. And so did undergrad there. And through all of undergrad, through grad school, all my career, everything I've gotten to help people live well, except the time I worked at Boot Country. I did work at Boot Country.
Wait, Boot Country. What is a Boot Country?
Yeah, they sell boots.
They sell boots.
They sell boots and Western wear kind of stuff.
Is that like down on the Broadway Strip or in Nashville?
Well, there is now, but I actually worked at it in a mall, in a local mall. They had one. And what was so funny was I was horrible at selling boots.
Okay.
Because there's people that are good at selling boots.
Yeah, there's people that are good at there are. Believe me, I had some coworkers that their commissions were amazing. I stunk because and the manager said when I left, he said, if you ever want to come back and work here, you can. I'm like, why? Because I stunk at this. Because people would come in. Let's say, Charlie, you came in and you sit on, say, Charlie, which Charlie am I talking to? They don't know.
The smarter, the better looking one.
There you go. Yeah. Well, Nicky, I'll turn this way.
Yeah.
Dis.
It's that thing I turned a couple of days ago, made me.
Yeah.
I'm just the old one now.
Yeah, you're out to pasture, as they say it.
Oh gosh. Anyway, so Charlie, you come into boot country and you say that you're looking for a pair of boots. I say, well, what do you want? What do you play along with me? What are you wanting to do? And what are you wanting to wear them for?
So I like boots that are more for farm work. So I need a low profile boot with a wide toe box. I hate the pointy ones, especially and I need them to be functional because I don't need the snake skin or the ostrich skin.
No,
or the
he's not
alligator
playing
skin.
right because
He's playing
He's
right.
good?
He's playing. He's playing. I'll work with anything. This is good.
I've literally bought boots before. On multiple occasions, I wore boots up until I was about 16.
Stay in character. You're in the store.
So no, I want boots. I don't want any of those lace up things. Like
Okay.
a lot of people wear like the Laredo styles. I don't like those little frilly things. Just a basic boot with a wide toe box.
Okay. So this is going to mean you're going to need a good amount of arch support and a good support on the heel and stuff. So we need to take you over here to these really expensive boots.
Yeah, but
That
I also
have all that.
I also have weak arches though.
Okay. So we've definitely got to have good arch support then.
Okay.
So for him, I'm taking him to these super expensive boots that are amazing for his functionality, his health, his wellness. And at that point, 9 times out of 10, people are like, I'm not going to spend $1,000 on a pair of boots.
So real quick,
Yeah, yeah.
this so for boot country? Not or if you don't know boot country, they're known for 2-for-1 now. Were they doing 2-for-1
Yeah.
then too?
No.
Okay, so people don't go to boot country to buy expensive boots.
Yeah, they did then. We had Lucchese's even.
Okay, so you really had $1,000 boots?
Yeah. Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's fancy.
And so, but then other people would come in and they'd be like, "Oh, I need a cool looking boot because I'm going to go dancing." And be like, "Well, tell me about your feet. Tell me how much you're on the be in the boots." Da 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 da. Well, you need these expensive boots, and they're just looking for something fashionable, so they walk out with nothing.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was funny because I always focused on their health and wellness, not focusing on, okay, they just want a cool pair of black looking, black boots that are cool looking. So anyway, that was my one, my one rail off of that.
One thing, if you were wearing toe spreaders, what would you recommend?
Since I don't know what toe spreaders are, I have no idea.
We've had this ongoing thing that Charlie Y over there has invested in toe spreaders, and they've actually helped his feet, right?
Yeah, I do have a wide toe box, and so I was finding that in a decade or two, I'll have bunions pretty bad if I don't correct it.
Gotcha.
So wearing narrow shoes cause my toes to be pointed in and muscles atrophied.
Right.
Yes.
And I've been wearing toe spreaders and I've been working on it and it's been working out. And
Oh, cool.
yeah, I'm reversing some of the damage I've done.
But we don't want to take too much time on the toe spreaders today.
Go ahead.
But I have to ask, bringing us back to you knew you wanted to do this early on. Did you have the traditional path in education to become what you are today?
Yes, it was undergrad in exercise phys, master's in health promotion, and then started working at Vanderbilt Medical Center after that.
Gotcha.
And now I've talked about all the fun stuff. On the downside of all this was also around the same time that I knew what I wanted to do. All the women in my family dieted. So I just started dieting at 3rd grade to lose 2 pounds. Not because there was a doctor had said, or it was what we did.
So what made you think when you were 8 years old that you needed to lose 2 pounds when you're still an actively growing kid?
Because that's what the women in my family did.
So it was just pure imitation.
It was
there was
just
no
pure
pressure
imitation.
put on you or anything like
Nope,
that?
not at all.
Okay.
I still have my, in fact, one of my YouTube episodes, I show me, still have the first diet magazine I ever bought when I was 8 years old. Just
That's a lot.
This is what we do. If you are a female in this family, this is how you're cool. This is what you do.
And talking about that, because obviously there's a lot of people today, it's even worse because you have social media now being part of that as well. What you said that the downside, what part of that do you feel? I mean, obviously any 8-year-old dieting is not healthy, but what did you experience?
The biggest thing that started coming out of that was then the diet mentality of a horrible relationship with food, a horrible body image issue, things going on with that, always feeling like you're never enough. This next diet is what's going to make you acceptable or good. And because you're fighting, we can certainly get into this at whatever point in our conversation, because when you're dieting, you're fighting both physiology and psychology.
Mm-hmm.
It's a trap. You always end up, you lose 2 pounds, you gain 3. And because, as you said, at 8 years old, you're still growing and maturing, and you're supposed to be putting on weight. It was that constant battle of, I'm not enough. Something's wrong with my body. Something's wrong with me, that I can't control myself to eat this certain number of calories.
Huh. Was the bigger metric the scale or the mirror?
The scale.
Isn't that interesting? It's what we can quantify. It's data.
Yeah,
it's
data.
It's the only metric you had back then was your weight. And therefore, it was something you could see go up, it could go down. It didn't matter all the other more important things about your health that you couldn't quantify. Strength, everything, when we're talking about an 8-year-old now, if you're talking about older people, you get into all these other metrics, but we still fixate on the one thing that we can see every morning because it's a flat piece of ceramic in our bathroom called the scale.
Yeah, I don't have one of those though.
Yeah, good man.
I refuse.
Good man. Well, and you're talking about strength or things like that. Weight is something that, at least initially, if somebody's dieting, can be quickly manipulated. Or even if you're not dieting, you can just simply not eat or drink anything one day. And the next day, the scale is going to be less, even though the health of your body hasn't changed any. It's actually deteriorated if you've not had water with it. But anyway, versus something like strength, you're not going to go work out one day and gain 3 pounds of muscle and go, woohoo, look how much more of a bicep I have. It's not going to happen.
But you can apply data to the same stuff though. So you can measure your biceps actually.
Yeah,
and I did this.
Yeah, it's a matter of how quickly it shifts.
Yeah, that's true. It's a longer haul for sure. But I used to work out a lot, and I got up to 245, and the weight never mattered to me. But I did have body dysmorphia because when I look at myself in the mirror, I saw the old me in whatever body I was in, and the entire time I was bigger. I was just like, I don't look any different from you. And now I go back and watch videos of it, and I'm like, dang, I was pretty big.
I was pretty ripped.
Yeah. That's a lot of weight to carry around. But my mind couldn't reconcile it when I was that size.
And I don't mean to pry too much into
I'm an
younger
open book on
days,
this stuff.
because obviously you're an advocate for what you do now. Did that lead to detrimental things in the early years of eating disorders or anything like that?
I was... the way it was diagnosed was anorexic symptoms. I never was officially anorexic, like in the hospital and that kind of stuff. A lot of, body dysmorphia stuff. I was an exercise, it's exercise bulimia, where you would eat. I was like, one of my things, I was in junior high, early high school. It's like, why is it I'm gaining weight even though I'm walking 10 miles a day? Well, for that, it was because metabolism had messed up, and also because I would binge eat and then go walk a half marathon.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot to that. And to give a little bit of, I don't think I've ever said this to anybody in Nashville, but I had a lot of eating disorders, a lot. I don't mean a lot. It went for a long time. Probably from 18 to 25. And that's when I really got on the health kick and got away from that, but definitely bulimia.
Really?
I went years and went down pretty severely in weight.
Is that, so when you initially lost all of that weight, was it?
That wasn't the same.
Okay.
So I probably got up to, let's say, 210 pounds in college.
Okay.
And used bulimia to get down to probably 160.
Really?
And then once I got married, got up to about 232 pounds. That was the last time I saw that number. And then exercise. But the good thing about that was I lost 10 pounds every 6 months.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, I was eating so I could go for a run. And running, I definitely went to extremes with running, for sure. And from that, though, got down to about 150. And I'm about 160, 165 now. And I've been between plus or minus 15 pounds for the last 15 years. And what could I control? I love data, and I knew that was the thing. And I definitely am too fixed on the scale still to this day. And it bothers me that I after you go for a 20-mile run, the next day you are heavier.
Yeah.
If you hydrate.
Yeah.
Why? Because your body is inflamed.
Yeah.
And it wants to hold on to water because it's in a trauma state. And it took me years to figure that out, or actually read about it probably. Yeah. And, so those things. So I would run 20 miles and not eat because I'm thinking, well, I'm going to weigh more tomorrow. And I was like, that was the dumbest things that I would do.
Yeah.
So.
And that's it's such a super intense danger. It showed up different for you than it did for me. But one of the intense dangers of focusing on the data of the weight, because then we're ignoring what our bodies are actually telling us. It's like, hey, I'm inflamed. I ran 20 miles. Could you please feed me? The body knows how to fix itself when we listen to it.
Well, obviously, we're going to learn a lot today. Thank you. And I didn't mean to say anything about me. I didn't mean to bring down the mood here. But, I look back at that.
But this is how the data manifest. I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah. And it's, I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed. I'm actually, there's nothing in my life. I'm always an open book too, because I do feel anything that I feel like I may have done that others shouldn't, I want to be an advocate for.
Yeah.
Just as much.
You want to help people learn as few hard lessons as possible.
Man, I'll tell you. For sure. Yeah, and maybe even run less because I'm paying for it to this whole body these days. But, I want to make sure that, tell us what you do today.
So what I do today is help men and women who are busy professionals who are saying, I want to feel better. I want to have more energy, but I don't want to run 20 miles. How do I do that? And the other piece that does come up often is so many people in America have dieted, men and women both, and they've created some of this diet mentality. And it's almost this 2-bucket tug of war of, I want to eat for energy and feel great and look at my health and nutrition and wellness, but I don't want to be pulled into the diet mentality again. And it's seen as an either or. And it's like, no, we can do both. We can't. And intuitive eating is the way that you do that. And that's what I help people with day to day.
So you mentioned it. So let's hear a little bit about what intuitive eating is and how it compares to traditional diets. Because I feel like this was the first time when we had you on, or when you agreed to come on the show, I started looking into it and I was just like, okay, well, this seems reasonable, but what exactly is it, and how does it compare?
And to give a little play-by-play, Sheri was doing a dance in the background because it's obviously something she's very passionate about. Yeah. So, and as we do that, we also want to make sure that we understand when you talk about wellness, we're talking about eating today. We're talking about nutrition. We understand there's so much more to that. But I'd like I'd love to hear intuitive eating and what goes into that.
So to tag on what you were saying about wellness, yes, wellness is nothing is in a silo. How you exercise affects your appetite. How you're eating affects your mood, affects your mental state. How you're meditating affects your craving for. It's all interrelated. Intuitive eating in a nutshell is eating the way you did when you were 2 years old. It's your body tells you what it needs, when it needs it, how much it needs. Your body tells you when it's hungry, what types of food set well with you. There's no emotional eating, but there's also no deprivation eating, or deprivation, which then, oh gosh, it's like for me, if you tell me, I'm not a huge chocolate fan, but if you tell me, you can't ever have chocolate cake again, the psychological play of that is I'm going to go eat chocolate cake just because you told me I can't have it. So intuitive eating takes out all of that deprivation. It takes out unfortunately, it takes out all of the external data that we can externally manipulate. And you're just looking at what is my body's signal on this. There's an intuitive eating hunger scale that actually was really funny. I had created a graphic on this for my social media recently because a client said, well, I'm doing really good at paying attention to this scale where I don't wait until I'm so hungry I want to eat a cow. Because so the bottom of the scale, I now have a cow. And she said, because when I do that, I end up stuffing myself like a turkey. And so that's at the top of the scale. Right in the middle is, and I'm just going to run through this real quick so you've got a sense of what hunger is with intuitive eating. If you picture a scale 1 to 10, 5 is neutral. 5 is no sensation in your body that you're needing food. Like you're not Charlie Y, are you, which one's Charlie
I'm
Y?
Charlie Y.
Charlie Y. Charlie Y.
There you go.
I've already talked to you. Charlie P.
Charlie A.
Charlie A. Where did I get P from?
A P.
Pegian.
It's the P is what stands out. Okay.
That's right.
Is your big toe hurting you right now?
No.
Were you thinking about your big toe before I said anything?
No, but now that you say that.
Now that you say that, you're very aware of your big toe. A little bit of nidra yoga here. So
And I'm moving them because
moving
I
it.
just
Okay.
make sure they're not hurting.
all right. So your stomach, your digestive system is like that big toe. In that when it's at a 5, you're not aware of it. All right. Then you begin to get a little bit hungry. You get down to a 4 on the scale. That's what I call intermittent hunger of, okay, have you ever had that time you're just like, I think I could eat. Maybe I'm not sure if I'm hungry. Okay. That's around a 4. Most people within 30 minutes to an hour of that, they're going to be down to a 3. And that's pleasant hunger. That is, food would really taste good right now. I'm not ravenous. I'm not going to push you down to go get my food, but food's really going to taste good. And then a 2 and a 1 is more, I'm very, very hungry and it's not going to be pretty. If you allow yourself to get down to a 2 or a 1, you're typically going to then binge in that meal that you do get because you're overcompensating for it. With dieting, we do that on a recurring basis and long term. A 6 is I feel the food. A 7 is it's beginning to get uncomfortable, all the way up to a 10 where you feel like you're stuffed like a turkey.
Yeah, that's the unbutton the pants.
Yeah, that's the lay down
Only
on the
supposed to
floor
happen
after
once a year.
Thanksgiving. Yeah, exactly. Thanksgiving, Christmas, yeah. So intuitive eating is listening to your body versus listening to the diets that are out there, or in my case, what the women in my family did. And it's just saying, nope, my body's not hungry right now. I'm not going to eat. Or my body is hungry right now. And when somebody says, you're going to get a second helping, it's like, yeah, it's none of your business. It's my body. And you eat it. You don't have to explain that you did a 20-mile run the day before and now your body's hungry and wants that.
So I just want to point out something that may be a difference in households, but I never heard, or you're getting seconds. It's like, there's more left. You should go get it.
Yeah, different families have different dynamics around food.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things too, is knowing that the exact answer for one person is not the exact answer for somebody else. Because we all have, food is a pun intended sticky situation of all the things that go on in our own minds. So that's intuitive eating in a nutshell. Any questions to kind of dig in more into that of explaining what it is?
Well, some of the restrictions or lack of restrictions I've seen are that you don't restrict your food. Like you just eat whatever your body craves. And so I think that's kind of where I wanted to go with it. It's like, it is nutritional guidelines, I guess, but it's not a strict diet. So it's like, if you feel like this. And so I like the way that the scale you've got is like, you're building data on where you're at. You're helping people identify their feelings personally. And so that's that customizable piece. But like, what if I only crave donuts?
You won't. Because
Why?
when you listen to, because that was not how your body was designed. When part of the data that you capture with it is, how do I feel after eating this? So it's about the hunger and fullness, but part of it is about what's my body's sensation. It's like, for me, I know, and I'm going to compare myself to my husband. For me, I know I need a certain amount of protein in a meal for me to feel satisfied, have good energy, everything functioning the way, brain functioning the way I want it to. My husband, on the other hand, needs a little bit more carb. I still need carb. Everybody needs carbs, but he needs a little bit more carb and a little bit less protein for how his body functions. And the only way that you do that, the only way you find that out is just if you've gotten away from paying attention to it because of dieting or other things, then it's just collecting the data on yourself of how long did this meal keep me satisfied? What kind of energy do I have after this? How did I sleep last night based on what I ate the day before?
I've done some of that, but Charlie Peking over there has broken that down into a very fine science.
Well, yeah, and I think you first of all to give a little bit more. I've been a vegetarian for most of the last 10 years.
Okay.
And the reason, pretty simple. It's almost basically intuitive eating. Beef never has liked me.
Mm-hmm.
Dairy has never liked me. Chicken, I feel terrible after eating chicken. We live in the South where everything's frozen seafood.
Yeah.
And I'm just not dying for a frozen piece of something.
I know.
And so what do I have left? Pork? Well, I miss bacon. But I don't feel good after eating bacon.
Yeah.
And so I got to a point where it was about how I felt because I knew what eating dairy did to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'll still eat a piece of pizza. I don't feel good after that. And I got to a point where I basically cut everything. I was gluten-free and everything free. And my wife would be like, just eat a pretzel, and because I was to that point, I felt like I wasn't eating anything. But when you do get off of everything, you only crave donuts when you know what a donut tastes like and you've had it recently. I think your body does change its cravings. We talked about it yesterday as we were prepping. I actually have a psychological aversion to donuts. Why? I had to buy a dozen donuts every day and take it to a different car plant when I worked up in Detroit. And I couldn't stand the smell of donuts because it was in my car all the time. And so, yes, donuts are amazingly delicious. But I smell a donut, boy, I go into shock. And I just can't stand it.
I got to tell you my donut story then.
Oh, yay.
So when I was at Belmont undergrad, I was running cross country. And I was still dieting at the time. So I was under fueling my body and we were doing 2-a-day workouts. So run in the morning, under eat during the day, run in the evening. I was working at a fitness center. I go into the break room. And of course, at this fitness center, there's donuts in the break room. Imagine that. Of course, they're everywhere. So I would walk in and there would be a dozen donuts. There would be no other people. I would walk out. There would be way less than a dozen donuts, otherwise known as Sheri had her major serving of donuts.
Yeah, you had your fill.
Yeah. And when I looked back at my data, and in that case, we'll call it's my journal. Mm-hmm. So years later, I go back and I'm reading through my college journal and I'm seeing all this, I'm so bad. I ate all these donuts today. Why don't I have any control over myself? This and that. I didn't notice at the time, but I noticed it looking back at my data, at my journal. Well, dang, Sheri, you also the day before had eaten 1,200 calories and we're doing 2-a-day workouts.
Yeah.
Of course you go into a break room and you overeat these donuts because your body's craving it. Mm-hmm. So when I was going through my intuitive eating counselor certification, one of the things you learn in that is you can't take somebody where you've not been. And I thought, I wonder if I still have a hang up about these donuts. So I went and I got 2 Krispy Kreme. And if you're not from the South, you don't know what Krispy Kreme donuts are. They're supposed to be amazing. So I got these 2 Krispy Kreme jelly-filled donuts. Mm-hmm. And I took the first bite and I went, it's not quite as good as I remember.
Huh.
But maybe it's just the first bite. I'll get the second bite. I got through almost one of them and I was like, it tastes like sugar-coated cardboard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How in the world did I ever like these? But it was because my body was craving sugar and fat because it was deprived of food.
Yeah, you probably like those types of workouts deplete your glucose stores.
Mm-hmm. Your glycogen, yeah.
Oh yeah, your glycogen. Sorry,
it's totally fine.
And that's it's a good way to replenish it. You get all the bad stuff with it, but it replenishes your glycogen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So looking at it's hard to just say, well, eat what you feel good. Again, when we say data, what we think of it is as a way to capture reality. So, it's not about, has to be a number, has to be this, but you are looking at the data that you are collecting every day. How'd you feel? What did you eat? Did you sleep well? All of these different things lead to you becoming an intuitive eater. What are some tips, tricks, or things that people can use to get started understanding the data that they need to be able to start eating healthy?
Okay. So we do start with templates. Okay. I do encourage people to start with, if you are either so out of touch with your body because of the dieting like I was, Charlie, like you were.
Sure.
or if you've just been running a rat race life and living on McDonald's burgers and fries, you're also going to be out of touch. You know, your body's not going to recognize up front that, you know, actually I would feel better if I had some steamed broccoli and, you know, chicken for everybody other than Charlie A.
That's right.
So you
More
start,
broccoli.
That's more broccoli. Yeah. So you start with one thing I strongly encourage people to do is what I call a powerful plate. And I've got this as a graphic that clients even have up on their pantries or refrigerator. And I'll give you all links to that if you want it. Anyway, the powerful plate, if you picture a circle, your plate, half of it being vegetable, a quarter of it being some type of complex carbohydrate, brown rice, sweet potato, you know, something like that. A quarter of it being a protein, whether that's beans, if you're a vegetarian, or dairy or egg whites or something like that. And then somewhere mixed in there is going to be some kind of healthy fat. That's the template to start with. And then you play with that based on how you feel. Like I said, for me, I need a little bit more protein. My husband needs a little bit more carb. That's one way to play it. Another is, have either one of y'all heard of the Blue Zone? Okay.
Go ahead and explain it, though,
Okay.
since it doesn't matter if we understand. It's what people at home
No, I was going to
understand.
explain anyway. I just want to see
there
if
you
y'all
go.
got it. All right. So Blue Zones, you talk about data heavy.
Yep.
This guy went and looked at all the different areas of the world to see who had the longest living, healthiest cultures. And they tagged different areas by color. And it just so happened that the ones that had the longest living, they tagged as blue. So that's how the term Blue Zone came out. And so they looked at everything of the Blue Zone in the Blue Zones, from their nutrition, their movement, their lifestyle, their social connections, things like that. And the biggest thing that came up, and Charlie, you're going to love this, is
I already know.
a plant, what they call a plant slant. It's not that they're vegans or even vegetarians, but they eat mostly plants. And it's funny when people say, well, you know, I eat mostly a plant-based diet, and they're living on Twinkies. It's like, no, just because it's not meat doesn't
That's
mean
right. And
that
a lot
it's-
of vegetarians
Yes.
do not eat vegetables.
Yes.
Wait, what?
A lot of vegetarians do not eat vegetables.
Please explain.
There's so many substitutes now out there. So people are eating the soy-based chicken nuggets, then eating French fries for lunch, and then a shake for dinner. And they don't touch. I know of a lot of vegetarians where
That's bad.
nothing. It makes no sense. And I think the best part of being a vegetarian is I went 100% green. I crave salads.
Yes.
I love I love vegetables now. So anyways, keep going.
Well, and what you just spoke to gets down to, once your body gets used to feeling that way based on those things, you don't have to tell yourself, I have to have this and I can't have this. Your body is craving those things. It's like you give yourself permission. I can have something. Otherwise, you've got a psychological trip going on of deprivation fear. But so in my when I was recording my Nourish Your Life workshop, one of the participants said specifically, what do I do? My daughter just decided she wanted to be a vegetarian, and she doesn't like vegetables, and she's living on peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Like, that's a lot of vegetarians will do that.
Yes. Yeah.
I did not know that. I thought that a requisite for being a vegetarian is you have to love like hearty green vegetables.
No, not these days. You know, I mean, that would have been a really
so
bad
weird.
diet 20 years ago, or when I became a vegetarian. First time was probably 2008. So it's more. I keep saying 10 years, but it's more than 10 years.
Yeah,
now.
time gets past us.
Yeah, it does. It
Tell me
does.
about it. And I noticed it was all about if I went too far, I couldn't go vegan. Couldn't do it. I just didn't feel good. I had no protein. I don't like fake stuff.
Yeah.
I do like tempeh and tofu, but I am not going to go buy, the Impossible burgers and things like that. Even though they taste fine, it's just not my thing.
Yeah.
So I can get down to almost no protein if I am not
If
careful.
you're scared, that's,
So I'll add a pea protein powder to my oatmeal in the morning. You know, just little things like that. And and things. So going back to the blue zones, because I'm fascinated by this because I've been following this that study and stuff.
And I actually do know about it. So I didn't know it was called blue zones, but one of my best friends is huge into longevity.
Okay.
And so he's always talking about it because he's like, they live near water. They drink a glass of wine a day. And this micronutrient heavy.
Obviously plant-based. And what type of exercise are they normally? Are they just walkers?
Yeah, it's not high intensity stuff.
Yeah.
It's just the daily movement. And I say no high intensity. I've moved 20 tons of dirt, it seems like, with our garden. And yes, some days are high intensity for them if they're doing it. But then there are other days they're just out walking with their sheep or whatever, and it's not high intensity at all.
Is there a geographic concentration of these, or is it all over the world?
It's all over the world. There's 2 that are Mediterranean. So if you've heard of the Mediterranean diet, that's, picture the Mediterranean diet as one of the big type of blue zone type of diets. Again, heavy plant-based. And one's Japan, one is Costa Rica, and I forget where the 5th one is. But
the one in California is Loma Linda.
Yeah,
that's
California.
Right.
And it's a lot of fish though in the diet too, because they get a lot of amino acids and things like that in their
typically it's about 2 to 3 servings of fish a week.
Gotcha. Yeah, and see, I think that's where I aspire these days, and I'd love our nutrition talk today. It's almost like intuitive eating kind of blows up the idea of what's the best diet.
Right.
It's technically the diet that makes you feel.
Well, it's like let's chase what you were talking about, the pea protein, the tempeh.
Pea protein.
Yeah. I was trying to do a lot of that kind of stuff, and I was like, dang, my digestive system is not working with this. I went and got tested for food sensitivities. I'm sensitive to soy. I'm sensitive to peas. I'm sensitive to walnuts, of all things.
Weird.
And so
I'm almonds, and I love almonds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's just learning and one of the things I like in today's society is I can go get tested, get a blood test, and find out what I'm sensitive to. I don't have to do an elimination diet
I was about to ask about that.
I mean, you can if you want to. But it was just like, it was so much faster for me to say, here, take my blood, and a week later, tell me what.
So let me ask you about that then. Have you done that?
I have. I don't want to get into it more.
If I wanted to go to a doctor, what type of doctor would I go to, and what would I ask for?
Typically, your traditional MDs are not going to, they're not going to be doing it.
Because they don't deal with nutrition for the most part, right?
For the most part.
Yeah.
I mean, some do. I mean, but a naturopath, there are some Ds that are also a naturopath, and they'll do that type of testing. A DO, a doctor of osteopath. Anyway, my DO. So instead of an MD, they're equivalent, but they do a much more holistic lifestyle.
Like they treat your body as a system.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Gotcha. Did you said online as well? Because I did mine through an online service.
Oh, I didn't do mine online.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, I did. It was called Everly Well.
Okay.
And it was super easy. I actually did it twice because, they only test for a certain number of foods. And then they say, and like 2 years later said, hey, would you like to try again? And the interesting thing is, because you eliminate those things. Because at some point I'm like, it was like all the things that I liked. I was like, what? Because it was, and that's when I found out about chicken. And I was like, well, no wonder I feel that way. But almonds, I was doing tons of like almond butter, almond milk. And I'm like, and now you're telling me, I'm like almost thinking that it was kind of a sham kind of thing. But I eliminated it for 2 years, came back, and it still said that I was almonds, and it added some additional things. So that was the one that I have found online. If anybody wants to just give it a try, they send you a little thing. I think it's a blood prick, from what I remember. And I've done a few of those. They have like 18 different tests, but for food sensitivity, that was one that I thought at least gave me the information I wanted.
Yeah. And so you could have done an elimination diet, but doing the blood test was definitely faster.
I thought I was gluten sensitive. The truth was I was baker's yeast sensitive.
Interesting.
And so that to me means bread that rises a lot is the one I should stay away from.
Leavened bread, as they call it.
Leavened bread. And so, don't, if you see me, I'd rather have a thin crust pizza. I love a tortilla, and I have no problems. And I went years without tortillas in my life. Oh,
I had baker's yeast is one of mine. And so, but a sourdough yeast I can handle.
Me too.
So they're in Atlanta, Georgia. I have it shipped to me. Thank you very much. There is a rye, and I'm also sensitive to wheat, not gluten, but wheat. So there is a rye sourdough that is baked in a Atlanta bakery that they ship to me.
That's cool.
Goes in my freezer. I love it.
That is great. And to me, that is a great use of data. It is, because you're right. And we talk about this all the time. Data allows us to go a little bit faster, accelerates a process, to decision making.
So let's talk about to accentuate that, let's talk about the difference between getting an easy screening that tells you specifically what you're allergic to versus an elimination diet. So an elimination diet, you have to stop eating something for long enough to change your gut biome to be able to recognize that you're not eating it and you don't want it anymore. And then you make a measurement.
Yeah,
but
and then you eat it and realize, oh, my stomach or my skin inflamed or something. Yeah.
But there's a lot of biomarkers that you have to be looking for yourself. And so, as a layperson, I could easily miss one of those or misattribute. Misattributing is would be my worst thing. But it's a very, you are collecting data, but it's messy versus like the new way to do it, which is just go get a blood screen and then it just tells you.
Yep, exactly, Charlie. Exactly.
I like it. So I want to go rapid fire for a second.
Okay.
Because first of all, we're trying to throw Sheri off her game, and it's not working yet. We tried her. No,
are
of
you?
course not.
Y'all didn't tell me this when I
because you don't tell somebody you're trying to throw them off their game. No, I'm kidding. Of course not. We really are. You can tell we're geeks about this stuff. Okay, macronutrients, micronutrients, are they things that you track or you care about in somebody's diet?
The macronutrient in the traditional how many grams of, I don't give a rip.
Okay.
Because if you ran 20 miles yesterday, your macros are going to be massively different than next week when you're sitting and recording a bunch of podcasts, not doing things.
And by the way, it's not linear either, right? Like, if you think you burned 1,000 calories, that doesn't mean go eat 1,000 calories. Right. It doesn't work out that way.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. What?
Trust me on that. That's
how I live, though. I work out to eat.
There is nothing funnier than I do running groups. So you start at a restaurant and you go run 3 miles, come back and people are eating spaghetti dinners and 6 beers and feeling good about it. And I'm like, oh, you definitely overate for that. And, it's like, I don't know why I'm not losing weight. I'm like, really? But so it's not linear.
No, it's not linear. And I've had clients before, this was years ago, when I remember a woman came in my office and she said, I don't get it. I'm working out and I'm having trouble buttoning my jackets now. Everything's getting tighter. I was like, well, let's talk about what you're eating. She's like, well, after my workout, I feel really great. And so I'll go home and I'm like, oh, well, I can have this piece of cheesecake or I can have this whatever. Nothing wrong with the cheesecake if that's what you really want. But if you're eating it because you feel like you earned it through burning 100 calories, doing a little bit of weightlifting, no, that's what's happening. Anyway.
I feel personally attacked now.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Anyway.
All right. So by the way, a macro means
yes.
is
macro is carbohydrate, protein, fat.
Okay.
And alcohol.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything that has a calorie or it can be equated to a calorie.
Right. Okay. Whereas micronutrient, that's your vitamins, your minerals, omega-3 fatty acids, which technically is a macro because it's a fat. But we can talk about omegas in a minute. But the bigger thing is what's the proportion of things I like. So the powerful plate that I mentioned ago, that's more important than actually counting the grams of stuff. It's like if I sit down to eat and I'm at a 3, I'm physically hungry, I know I need to have approximately half vegetable, quarter protein, quarter carb, a little bit of fat thrown in.
Yeah, gotcha. You just want to eat some. So leafy greens are the best for micronutrients, and I would say as a whole, at least here in the U.S., like we're woefully undernourished in that category, right?
Yes, and
okay, yes, and
we are woefully undernourished on that. Greens are amazing for micronutrients, but I don't want people to hear. Because the diet mentality, anybody who's listening to this, if you're listening to this and you've had the diet mentality, you know what I'm about to say. You hear leafy greens are the best for micronutrients. And so now you're leaving out all of the reds and the yellows and the purples and all of the phytonutrients you're going to get from those other colors.
Okay.
It's really about variety.
All right. So don't stick with one thing. Just make sure you got vegetables.
Yeah, make sure you got vegetables and make sure that it is a variety of vegetables.
Okay.
Variety is in color.
Variety
color
is
does
in
matter, doesn't it?
Color does matter.
Okay.
And variety of texture, variety of everything. Because that's one of the things from a psychological standpoint. The more varied you can make it, the easier it is to get it in, because it's not broccoli again tonight. We've had broccoli every night for the past 6 weeks.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Broccoli should be eaten every night.
I do like broccoli.
Well, let me ask you this then. As a vegetarian, what am I missing in micronutrients? Is there anything that I should, because everybody starts supplementing with things. I never have. I've never, other than vitamin C, when I feel a little bit under
Wouldn't your
weather.
big issue be hitting your macros instead of micros?
You tell me, right? But I just didn't know if you hear the omega, fatty acids, things like that, you can get out of like salmon or something like that.
Oh yeah, it's
Is
fish
that-
oil,
is that-
krill oil.
Is that something I'm missing, or hey?
If you were vegan, we would have to really talk about, okay, how to structure things.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are a vegetarian eating a wide variety of all kinds of nuts, all kinds of beans, occasionally maybe eating fish, but that's not really vegetarian.
I do eggs.
You do eggs, okay.
And cheese gets into things.
Okay. Do you do walnuts?
I do.
Do you do flaxseed?
Yes, and I love chia seeds, hemp seeds from my oatmeal. I don't have any flax seeds right now, and I haven't done that in about 6 months.
Okay. Yeah, throw some of those back in. Those are the types of things that, is it as readily available in your body for omega-3 fatty acids as, say, salmon oil would be? No.
Gotcha.
But is it there? Yes, there. I grew up in Tennessee. There.
You go there, yonder. And
I do.
There you go.
Right down the holler.
Going rapid fire again. So that was really helpful. And I think what you can really get out of that is some of the data that you have is the color of your food is something to think about. And if it's only brown, which we have a lot of people in this world that only eat brown, and I think of meat as brown.
Sure.
So that and potatoes. Get something that is colorful on your plate makes a lot of sense.
Eat a rainbow. That's the data around nutrition is so good because it can be so loose and flexible. Mm-hmm. It's eat a rainbow. It's eat when you're physically hungry, stop when you're no longer hungry. Yeah, go ahead.
Great.
Eating the rainbow, like I didn't grow up that way. Like I only ate the brown, as you say it. Like hamburger helper was a staple in my diet growing up. But I had to learn to like vegetables, and in the beginning it was hard.
Yeah. In
the beginning, I just shoved it down. I just ate it. I just made myself do it. Mm-hmm. But then over time, I started loving it, and now I like it a lot. Like, give me some good broccoli, and I'll be happy.
Mm-hmm. Well, there you go. And a lot of people can't handle it because their body's not used to the fiber.
Right.
So that's something else to think about in that. Sticking with the food categories, that's what I'm looking at here. Is refined sugar the devil?
No.
What?
It is to me.
No. It's not the devil.
No. Well, give us a description of, when you hear refined sugar or sugar in general, people try to stay completely away from it. What are your thoughts?
All right. Like any processed thing, the closer to how something God made it came out of the ground, the better it's going to be for your body. Sure. My husband and I were on a trip in Jamaica after this big bike ride thing that we did. We went to this sugarcane plantation and had sugar cane soaked in ice water. It was amazing, but it was more fiber because of the cane. It was more fiber than it was actual sugar. But that's where we get our white sugar from. So is it the devil? No, because as soon as you say something is the devil, that's what everybody's going to feel deprived if they don't get it.
Fair enough.
Yeah. But if you're listening to how does my body feel after I have a half a teaspoon of sugar in my coffee, and yes, we can talk about coffee if you want. If I have half a teaspoon of sugar in my coffee and I feel okay with that, and that's the only sugar I'm having during the day and everything else is so balanced, your body can freaking handle that.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So it's not the particular item, it is where is it in balance with everything else.
Are sugar substitutes actually detrimental because it makes
yes.
your body's expecting
yes.
the sugar and it doesn't get it?
Yes. Sugar, so if you told me, Sheri, you can either have a a Coke or a Pepsi or a Diet Coke or a Diet Pepsi, give me the sugar any day. Because my body, as much as I won't like it, because I don't like the taste of it, my body's going to handle that because it's a natural substance. My body knows what to do with.
Even if it's high fructose corn syrup?
Even if it's high fructose corn syrup, I would rather have that than pure chemical.
Than like stevia and does Sweet and Low count as pure chemical?
Sweet and Low is definitely pure
that's
chemical.
the worst, isn't it?
My parents grew up, or when I was growing up, like they would drink their sweet tea, but just with Sweet and Low. And I never could get on that train ever.
That's aspartame, right? Is that what that is? Or saccharin?
Saccharin, that's saccharin.
And then aspartame is NutraSweet.
Yeah.
And then stevia is supposedly from a plant.
But let me tell you about stevia. I had an herbalist once say this. We use stevia, but it's green because it is the dried, ground up stevia plant. Yeah. He was like, when you go buy stevia in the store, what color is it? I was like, it's white. He's like, what plant out there is white? Like, that's true. Oh, that's true. It's been chemically processed to get it look like that.
Yeah, okay. stripping colors is tough. Like that's what kills a lot of seed oil too. Is the stripping the colors and the smell.
Yeah. Well, if so it's not the devil, but what we know is definitely not the devil.
Well, I don't want to leave sugar yet because I have.
You have a personal stake in this ground.
So, I do pretty close to intuitive eating. With some intermittent fasting thrown in, except for if it gets past 10 o'clock, and I've talked about this on the podcast, so it's just for you. At past 10 o'clock, I'll binge, and it'll be the sweet stuff, 100%. And then I'll go to bed, and then I'll have an adrenaline spike about 6 o'clock the next morning, and then I won't be able to go back to sleep. And so for me, sugar is bad because it affects my sleep heavily. And then there's a lot of times there's alcohol mixed in there too, and so that's just more sugar. And so then I'm sugared out, and I'm up in sleep poorly up the next morning, and so I have to set myself up behaviorally to get away from that extra munching past 10. And I've been doing good about it lately, but it's a ebb and flow type thing. So what mechanism in the intuitive eating model would allow me to stop and just say, hey, is what I'm doing what I want to do? Or is what I'm doing like what I'm being compelled to do because I'm craving sugar now?
Okay, so I'm going to put on my coaching hat. We're going to do two things with this. One is
make them feel really bad, by the way.
No.
Shame.
No, that is one thing I love about intuitive eating is there is no guilt, there is no shame, there's only lessons.
I like that.
So as far as a mechanism within it is what I have my clients do of a pause. Mm-hmm. When you're at a 5 and you're neutral, or maybe even at a 4 on that scale of hunger, if you are wanting food at that point, you have to check in and go, what's really going on? Is it an emotional thing? Is it that I deprived myself of this? And you give yourself that pause. And one of the things, I love this one guy, he was like, I have this ice cream habit every night. After, before bed, I'll have this bowl of ice cream. And he's like, it's just habit. I don't even necessarily want it all the time. I said, how long would you be willing to sit with that uncomfortable craving before eating it? And he said, I could hang with it about 15 minutes. I said, great, that's your commitment. 15 minutes passes. If you still want it, you can have it. 6 months later, he still hadn't had it because he put in that pause just so it took out the automatic piece of it. So that might be one mechanism that would help. When you are craving that sugar before bed, Charlie, is it that it's 10 o'clock and I'm physically hungry? Tell me what's going on at that time.
So typically it's 10 o'clock and I'm tired enough to not care anymore. And so the thing is, I'm not even sure if I'm hungry. I think I just enjoy the sensation of like tasting food at that point.
Yeah.
And like most of the stuff we got. So I like chips can be thrown in there too. It doesn't have to just be sugar, but like I'll raid the pantry after 10 and it's all junk food. It's all stuff that's not nutritionally valuable to me.
On the hunger scale, where would you put yourself at 10?
See, that's the thing is like I do it mindlessly, I think. And so I'm not even thinking about hunger. And so I would say
you would be at a 5 then. You'd be neutral?
I'd be
or a 4 where it's kind of maybe...
Yeah, I think a 4 more most likely because I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about like, oh, like I could eat something, but then I know in that whole thing too, I'm obviously going 5 and then 6 and then 7. And then the worst nights I'm like, I can't eat anymore.
Yeah.
But then other nights it's just like I'll get to a 7 or 8 and then I'll stop. But it's unnecessary because I've already had all of my food for the day. Like everything should be closed up and wrapped up. And I've started a behavior where I brush my teeth and I put my retainer in like before 10 o'clock. Because if I don't have if I don't have it in by 10, then I gotta go brush my teeth, and then I gotta go do all this other stuff. I gotta move, and I just like sitting and watching YouTube at that point. And so I'm lazily and mindlessly like shoving food in my mouth while I'm watching YouTube videos.
Okay, so something that'll help with the mindlessness is if you make a commitment to yourself to only eat at the table. Because that is one, like the intuitive eating, there's 4 letters that I teach around intuitive eating. One is the H, hunger, we've already talked about. The W, we've already talked about, of what do you really want? How does your body respond to things? But then there's also the slow and savor, and then stop when you're satisfied. The slow and savor, you can't slow and savor if you're watching YouTube with it.
That's true.
So you go to my YouTube channel, you put on the intuitive eating videos.
There you go.
And it's like, if you're watching that at 10 o'clock at night, it's probably going to motivate you to not sit there and eat the stuff and go to the table and eat it. Because if you sit down to a table and you've got a bowl of chips, you're probably going to stop a whole lot sooner than...
Yeah, because I'm bored.
Because you'd be like... and then the other thing, just as kind of to be aware of, is, are you eating enough carbohydrates during the day?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh.
So it's because sometimes that's what triggers people to overdo sweets or carbs at night, is their body is going, you've not given me enough carbs today. And now that your guard is down, I'm going to get what I want.
Well, something else that impacts it is like I usually don't eat my first meal until noon. And then I'll try to eat, I'll get all my calories in between noon, and then we eat dinner
and midnight,
like 5 to 7. And so I want to be done around 8 o'clock because I know I've eaten enough calories. I know I'm fine. And then if the later I sit up, the more cravings I get and the actual more hungry I actually get.
Right.
But that makes sense because it was like 5 to 6 hours ago when I ate last.
Yep.
And so I've been trying to, because outside of that 10 plus window, like I do that. We only eat at the table. Like I don't pick at food all day or anything like that.
Sounds like the solution is just go to bed.
Yeah, that's where I was getting.
Right. I'm like, I'm in bed by 9 and I don't have that. I never eat after 9.
I have been doing that. So this month I take off from everything. I don't do caffeine, alcohol, like nothing. No.
It's no fun May.
Yeah, no fun May. But that's one of the things is like I'm getting tired when I'm supposed to be getting tired because caffeine has a heavy impact on me.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to lay down, and then I'll be asleep by 11. Whereas before I would be up and watching YouTube at 11, and definitely not in the bed until around midnight. And yeah, I'm replacing that time successfully right now. I'd say in the last 2 weeks I've only eaten past 10 twice, and both of them have been a little snack. That I'm actually just eating because I want a snack, and then I'm leaving it alone.
Very cool.
Well, I heard you say something in that little bit there, and
about
it
the
had the
caffeine.
word caffeine in it, so it's a good transition.
Yeah.
Because I heard that caffeine is the best thing you can do for your body, and that it equals hydration. Is that
does.
true? And I'm being very
you're
sarcastic.
so funny.
Yeah.
So caffeine can be fantastic for brain alertness when used strategically.
Which means 18 cups of coffee before 6 a.m.
Right, exactly. It can be fantastic for sports performance when used strategically. So when I'm saying all that is, don't hear me say don't ever drink caffeine. But yes, it will dehydrate you. It's not going to count towards your hydration of the day.
I think that is so key. And talk about hydration then, because we could talk about food all day long, and if you are depriving yourself of water, especially if you eat a diet where you're not eating vegetables that much, where we.
But after you listen to this podcast, you're going to be eating vegetables. So go ahead.
That's right.
You're gonna make yourself.
So there's a lot of people that do not drink water, and everything has caffeine in it. So I was talking earlier that my dad drinks Pepsi and doesn't drink water at all. So he is always, his lips are cracked or he feels, and I'm like, because you don't. And so you're saying, don't think of that cup of coffee as a way of hydrating.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
So what is it about caffeine that does that?
It's
Just a diuretic.
It's a diuretic. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a diuretic.
What does that
And
mean though? Because not
makes you
everybody,
pee.
so it makes you pee?
Makes you pee. So like
Okay.
if somebody is on a blood pressure, if somebody has high blood pressure and they're on a diuretic medication, it's to make them pee. The water thing, you talked about your dad's cracked lips. You know, he's in extreme chronic dehydration if he's having that. There's a lot of research on dementia patients and hydration that you can get about 80% of dementia symptoms significantly decreased when the person's brain is fully hydrated. So I think about that with, you know, the busy professionals that I work with. It's like they want to go in the boardroom and think well and make good decisions.
Yeah.
You got to be fully hydrated to do that.
Performance in those situations is very, very important because especially if you're like if you're trying to convince somebody, you know, to either buy your product or, you know, go with your plan or anything like that, like you need to be on top of things. And so to your point earlier, like caffeine as a nootropic in those situations, beneficial. But what about you get up every morning and then the first thing you do is drink a cup of coffee, and then the second thing is a cup of coffee, and then the third thing is a cup of coffee. And I'm looking at you.
Oh, I do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So honestly, one of the best things that you can do to set yourself up for an amazing day is drink a glass of water when you first get up.
It's great advice.
Now, can you then have a cup of coffee? Sure.
Well, I will.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for
Absolutely.
it. Go for it. But it's if you start with that cup of water or a couple of cups of water, and by cup I mean 8 ounces of water in the morning, you've sweated during the night, you've lost fluid during the night through breathing, you are waking up in a slightly dehydrated state, whether you feel thirsty or not. And we can get into the thirst thing. But you want to start your day with some water and then just keep drinking it through the day.
Well, let's bring it to the data then. Are you supposed to drink a certain amount of water, or does it go to thirst?
Thirst. Okay. If we were in a perfect world where nobody had ever negatively messed with any of the systems of their body, and they were in perfect attunement with that first tiny bit of thirst, they would be able to tell not just thirst in their mouth, but how their body felt.
Yeah.
Like with hunger, sometimes I don't feel a rumbling in my stomach. Sometimes I just feel a drop in energy. That's one of the signals. So there's more than just, oh, my mouth feels dry.
Yeah.
Also, just like, have either one of you ever fasted? Like just long term, like several days? Okay, so the first 3 days of fasting, you are ravenous, and then your hunger goes away. Your body adjusts. Same thing with thirst. If you are chronically a little bit dehydrated, your body gets used to that.
Yeah, it just becomes your homeostasis, right?
Exactly.
Wow.
And so people go, well, I don't feel thirsty. I only drink, 5. I've got a woman I was working with. She's like, I probably drink a couple of cups of water a day, and the rest of it's sodas or things like that. And she's like, and I don't feel thirsty. Well, that's because that's what your body's gotten used to. And then she started drinking plenty of water, and we'll get to what plenty means. She started drinking plenty of water, and she's like, now I'm craving it. Now I know what good hydration feels like in my body. So it's not so much a number, because I'm so glad that I am so glad that you mentioned running 20 miles, because that's a great play on this. What you do on a day-to-day basis is going to determine how much water that you need. The best test, the best data you can give yourself on that is, what's the color of my pee? If it's clear or straw colored or light, you're fine. You are well hydrated, and it can't just be that way periodically, because then it's maybe you've drunk so much at one time that it's just hitting your kidneys and flushing out. But if it's constantly like that, that means, yep, all the cells in my body, they got what they need.
Yeah, that's a good. And I'll have it where when it almost gets I hate talking about this subject, but almost to the brown, and you're like, well, I was outside all day. Son was playing baseball, and all you're doing is fixated on what they're doing. They play a doubleheader. You go home, and it's 95 degrees that day because it's Tennessee, and you're like, wow, I didn't realize how
dehydrated you were.
Dehydrated.
So down here in the South, most of the time we can really tell how much we're sweating, because it sticks to us and it never goes away because it's so humid down here.
Yes.
But if I go to Colorado, I have to intentionally drink because I'll never feel thirsty, and I'll never feel like I'm sweating either, because it just evaporates. And so to your point earlier, like I've I learned in 2018 that I was severely dehydrating myself with coffee, and since then I've learned more about myself and how I feel when I'm dehydrated. And so now I get a sense in my brain first, like I feel like a flatness or a dullness,
Oh, that is
and then I get irritable.
fantastic.
I
That
get
is
really
fantastic.
irritable.
That is you talking about the beauty of that data is telling a story about your body.
Well, I
love it.
journal too, and so we've said this before. Is like journaling is a good way to pull data out, and I lie to myself a lot.
We all do.
And so in my journal, that's where I find the lies. And once I write it down, then I'm like, okay, fine, I do this. And so the caffeine was great, and it's like it's a stimulant and stuff, but it's not the best for me. And then eating past 10 o'clock is not the best for me, because at one point I was trying to tell myself that it's fine because I'm eating a certain amount. It's whatever. Like my calories are fine, but I wasn't looking at so much sugar before sleep and how that was impactful. But I definitely get the dull sensation. And then, before my mouth even gets dry, but by the time my mouth is dry, I'm just like, I gotta chug water now.
Yeah. Well, and you just brought up by the time your mouth gets dry, there's some research showing how thirst, what we traditionally call thirst, is a lagging indicator.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and we hear that in running all the time. If you're drinking when you're thirsty, it's already too late.
Oh, really?
Because well, first of all, the exercise, obviously, you're losing a lot more water than you would if you were just in your day-to-day type stuff. And so or carbohydrates are a great example too. You only have a certain amount in your body. And, once you get through those 2,000 calories, you're done. You bonk. And so if you wait until then, your body can only process 300 calories of carbohydrates an hour at best.
So you used a term, you said you bonk?
Bonk.
You hit the wall.
That's running out of glycogen, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the people you see stumbling right before the finish
I
lines.
may have been that person a few times,
Okay.
and that was when my wife said, "Would you just eat a pretzel?" It literally was that. It was the Chicago Marathon actually, and the night before I had a sweet potato. That was it. I was literally depriving myself
wow.
Yeah.
before I was trying to go qualify for Boston. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how silly I was back then.
So from a sports perspective, the folks I know that run keto or paleo diets, they'll intentionally carb load the night before work, like any kind of prolonged
Yeah.
exercise.
Because your body has to have it.
Well, talking about all of those, I mean, I feel like we're debunking any type of specific diet. The diet that matters is the Sheri diet, the Charlie diet, the Charlie Y diet. It's whatever works for your body. But so I never will say everybody's got to be keto. Everybody's got to be plant-based. I don't believe that at all. So is there some merit to some of those? I mean, obviously plant-based does, from an aging perspective, we do see some evidence there. But is there any other diets that you glean a little bit of stuff from?
Or that you would recommend adhering to?
She's pausing because obviously it's hard.
I think she's...
We're going for dead air here
Yes.
because that's the answer.
Yeah.
Because you hit on it of the so-and-so's diet. I have a friend who's, because of some chronic medical conditions, his physician wants him on as nearly a carnivore diet as possible.
Okay.
But does that mean that that's for everybody?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. No. So it is truly, what does your body respond to? And what does your body respond to of, oh, cool, I lost the weight on this. It's, how's your brain functioning? How are you feeling? How are you sleeping? Is this sustainable?
Yeah, that's a big one. And I when I really started losing weight incrementally, was when I said, in the morning, I'm going to eat so I feel satisfied. And if I'm hungry two hours later, then breakfast didn't work. And I'm somebody that once my day starts, I don't even think, and it could be 9 o'clock all of a sudden. Work. And I will go all day without eating. I don't want to, but I do that. And then what do I do at 9 o'clock? I eat the house.
Right.
So it's not a good thing. I'm not saying that's the right approach. I do that a lot though. And so
If you want out of that, there's ways out of it. So keep going.
no, and I do want that. We're going to definitely at the end of this ask for your tips. So make sure that you get to that. So with all that just being said, the intuitive side, when people say, well, you're a vegetarian, you can't have this. I'm like, no, I'm on the Charlie diet. And when I say that, then it takes it off. But I mean, when you're a vegetarian, what happens is every time you go out with a group, everybody is now on a mission to find you something to eat. And so I almost never eat when I go out because I just don't want everybody to feel like they're doing things for me. To the point where my wife knew that I would love this one hummus that was on the menu, but she knew that if she said it, I'd be like, come on, stop trying to always find something for me. She didn't tell me. I didn't order it. She ordered it, loved it. And I was like, oh, I wish I had that. She goes, well, you should have let me. So you get into a little bit of that stuff. So I'm going off, but I'm gonna switch it. We do have a good amount of our audience that might be in the same boat as me, but let's just say Charlie A has had a couple of life changes in the last little bit. My son just finished his high school baseball career yesterday. My other son is in Tanzania on a study abroad. My oldest son just got married less than a month ago, and I turned 50. I said it, Charlie.
There you go.
All right.
I said it. That was the first time I've said it out loud. It almost rolled off the tongue. I'm old.
You were ready for it.
No, you're not.
You're right. I'm not. 50's the new 25. No. But I am at that age where is there things about my diet when you get older that you should consider?
I hinted at one a little bit ago, omega fatty acids, omega-3 fatty acids especially,
Okay.
For brain health. And it was funny, I was working with a, what's the word? Nurse practitioner. I was working with a nurse practitioner and we were talking about supplements, and she said there's not something I universally recommend for everybody from a supplement standpoint, except if they're not getting enough omega-3 fatty acids. She's like, that's one for your brain health you've got to have, and supplement form if you aren't getting it in your diet.
Okay.
The others would be protein, because even as a man, if your testosterone begins to drop a little bit as you age, you're going to need protein to keep muscle mass up. And that's men and women both.
Or some good old-fashioned TRT.
There you go.
What's TRT?
Testosterone replacement
therapy.
Or just eat a hamburger.
Or eat some protein.
Eat some protein. I mean, and you need both, because you've got to have. We won't get into the whole endocrinology stuff. You've got to have the testosterone, but the protein, you want to have the protein.
Well, and I think what that goes to is the older you get, the stronger you want to be, as strong as you possibly can.
Yes.
Every step you take, if that's the maximum weight that you can lift, that's every time you go up a step, that's your max. That's hard on you.
Yes.
And your joints start to feel it. You're more you're more likely to fall. We all know that, and I'm not saying at the age of 50, I'm talking now 70, 80, my parents' age, them falling could be incredibly detrimental.
I mean,
could be life.
Yeah.
And so being strong is just about getting out of the chair when you're 80, just as much as me going for a 20-mile run, which I don't.
Right.
Unfortunately, I don't do 20-mile runs anymore.
I think strength as you age is more about like securing the joints more than anything else. Like, and I look at it too as like flexibility. And we were talking about this. Flexibility has actually surpassed strength for me, because I was, when I was 245, I was strong, I was happy, but I was also flexible. And one of the things as I've gotten older is as I've started to realize that flexibility is like my body is trying to take it away from me naturally. And so I have to work against it to stay flexible. But range of motion does decrease injury over time, like period. Because if I can move my arm back here without getting injured, then I can, I've got more things that I can do injury free or whatnot.
Yes. Yeah. The goal is when I'm 100, I want to be able to put away my own groceries on the top shelf.
Oh, that's a
great
really
way
good
of
one.
saying it. Yeah.
I saw this lady at the airport one time, and it was a picture of health at, we'll call it 75, and her husband was juxtaposed to her, and he was hunched and bent over and couldn't really move. I saw her sitting in an airport, and she picked her leg up and put her foot right in the seat with her to tie her shoe without getting up or without moving. And that type of flexibility in somebody her age, I was impressed, and I almost went over and said, like, I saw what you did there, and I know that that's not by chance, or that's not genetic. You worked hard to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing for me, the visual of the groceries is it means, one, I'm strong enough to lift whatever it is, and then I'm flexible enough to reach all the way up.
To really get up there.
Yeah.
So those are the important things. And then, of course, do the things, eat the right things to keep that brain health going.
Yeah, so
which
you're-
makes complete sense.
Yeah, so if you're thinking of a given is assuming that you're eating all the veggies. But the key ones for as we get older is omega fatty acids for the brain, water for the brain, and having enough protein.
And the best sources of fatty acids?
Would be salmon, sardines, your oily fishes. If you don't do fishes, then walnuts, flax seeds, and possibly some supplement.
Probably supplement if I don't.
Yeah, I don't currently supplement with fish oil, but I did. I would get 4 grams of EPA a day.
And that's when you really have to buy the good stuff because otherwise it can be rancid. And
if you
don't go cheap there.
Yeah, so there's DHA and EPA is the important one, right? It's been a while since I've looked at it.
EPA is the more, I won't even say important because we need all of it. It wouldn't be there if we didn't need it. It's the more popular. It's more emphasized. That's the term.
Yeah, it's more of a precursor for bodily functions or for different types of bodily functions, and it also helps with inflammation more, right?
Yes.
So that was the main reason I took fish oil back in the day. It wasn't brain health. It was because my shoulders just hurt, like they were sore all the time. And this was before I started working out. So I started working out, and then I started taking fish oil, and the pain just went away.
Nice.
Gotcha. Well, I think that helps for the older generation. Charlie, you're not there yet.
I'm up and coming.
I'm 52, so
and you say it so easily.
I'm the old one in this circle.
I'm okay with it. No, I'm not.
No, you're not.
I'm not okay. I'll convince myself. But more importantly, I do really, really enjoy this idea of, and I've really thought about this since turning 50. Just eating healthy because I actually think of it as a hobby. I really do. I enjoy it. And I was telling my wife yesterday, I want to go and take cooking classes. I want to do things that go lean into eating healthy. So I'm really looking to embrace that. I love the idea of the data that we have doesn't have to come from my watch or my ring. It can come from my eyes, which means look at the color of my food, and that can let me know I'm getting my micronutrients. I think that's really important. Eat something orange, eat something purple, eat something green. And by the way, I don't consider white lettuce nutrient dense. When you look at iceberg lettuce, am I correct on that one? That's water, basically.
Okay, here's what's fascinating with iceberg. And if I could ever find the research article that I saw on this, I would gold stamp it. But there was at some point in my past that I read about what's in iceberg lettuce, and percentage-wise, there's actually one tiny, tiny nutrient that it has more of than other lettuces. All the lettuces have whatever this nutrient is. So when people say, "Oh, iceberg lettuce, it's a throwaway lettuce," no, it actually still has some stuff in it.
Okay.
Except for taste. It doesn't have taste.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, but
it only has taste when you have blue cheese dressing or whatever on it that people use on it.
Yeah,
it's meant to be a crunch. It's meant to be a crunch, and that's about it. Or it's a vessel for getting the other vegetables down. I want to go to tips and tricks or whatever we want to call that. But Charlie, I know you had some things. I want to make sure that we get all of that. And I expect this one to be a long. I hope you're okay with that, Sheri. This is we're going for only 5 more hours on this, or we should be wrapping up here soon.
I want to talk about this all day long.
Yes, we definitely can. So Charlie, I know you had some.
So to turn back around to the data-driven approach, you've oftentimes talked about biofeedback as a means to capture information, then to analyze it and stuff like that. And so one of the things that our listeners like is app recommendations and whatnot. So if you had to recommend one or more apps for biofeedback
or devices
devices, apps, tools, we'll call them, where would you go with that?
So you're wearing one of them is Oura Ring.
I love it.
Yep. And, so somebody who's super, super into the data piece of it, because with the Oura Ring, you can really hone in on If I had alcohol at noon, how did I sleep? If I had alcohol at 6 p.m., if I had sugar at noon, if I had sugar at 6 p.m., the only downside to something like that is you can get so hypersensitive, or maybe not hypersensitive, but what's the word? Where it's an unhealthy relationship with that data.
I think hyper-focused,
that makes sense.
hypersensitive.
Yeah.
It's like standing on the scale every day or multiple times a day.
Exactly. So if the Aura Ring, this is how I want to phrase it. If the Aura Ring or devices like that help you get more in touch with your body, it's a good thing.
Okay.
If it pulls you away from listening to your body and listening more to the data from what the system is telling you, that's not a good thing. If it's helping you interpret how your body's feeling. But I mean, I've had people who they have their Aura Ring, they wake up feeling amazing. And then the Aura Ring says, or their Apple Watch or whatever says that they didn't sleep well. Oh, well, okay, I guess I'm going to feel crummy today. It's like, no, you were feeling fine 5 minutes ago.
That's fair. So you should use it to help attune to your body.
Yeah.
Rather than using it to lead your body.
Yeah. You don't want those devices to be a substitute for you listening. One of the trackers is for food that's more of an intuitive eating based is Eat My Way.
Eat My Way. So that's an app you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we'll have a link to that in the description.
eatmyway.com. If you are somebody who doesn't, you're just like, oh, okay, I'm not going to do app stuff. I'm old school. I'm 52. I'm 60, and I want pen and paper. I've got, and I'll be glad to give it a link to you all or however we want to do this, but I've got intuitive eating worksheets that my clients, because that's a place that on that type of worksheet, and you can make up your own, of your writing down not just what you ate and not just when you ate it, but what was my emotional state? How did I feel? Who was around me? How long did this meal keep me satisfied? This is what I ate today, and I was munching at 10 o'clock versus this is what I ate today. And I wasn't munching at 10 o'clock. So what was the difference?
I like the emotional angle on that too, because so many times, one of the things I really didn't realize is that hunger and dehydration and lack of sleep really impact me emotionally. Like my fuse gets shorter, especially around the hunger. Like we have an open conversation that we all get hangry in our house, and that's fine because we know, like, okay, why is everybody going off the rails? Oh, because we're cooking dinner, it's almost ready, so let's just chill, and it helps manage the emotional outcome. We'll say.
Oh yeah.
But the sleep is one where I never knew how much sleep impacted my ability, not just from a short fuse, but my productivity and all of that kind of stuff. Like, sleep is super duper important. And I would never have, I never would have naturally associated the two. Maybe not never, but it would have been a lot harder if I wouldn't have been writing it down and capturing my emotional state after also recording how much sleep I had.
Yeah, you could more easily lie to yourself, like you said, until you saw it on paper.
Yeah, let's go into sleep a little bit, because I do think it is something that is interesting. And I want to ask this in a little bit of an abstract way. Is sleep really an indication of the day that you just had, or is sleep really a good indication of the day you're going to have?
Okay, part of that is going to be bad is relative, and bad can mean different things. Like, there are people who have a poor night's sleep and they consciously choose mindset. I am having a good day today, period. And they do everything possible to make that happen, such as staying well hydrated and making sure that they're spot on with what they're eating. And by spot on, do not hear diet, hear this is not a day for me to be mindless in my choices. I really need to be mindful in what I'm doing. And and you're asking, is it an indicator of what happened during that day? It also could be an indicator of what's happened for weeks. It can be an indicator of what's going on in your body. As a woman, perimenopause, when those hormones start shifting, sleep is a different animal for about 70%, according to one doctor I talked to. So it's an indicator of what's going on in your body. It's an indicator of what's going on in your environment. And then it is influencing how your day is going to be the next day.
Yeah, and that goes really to deep sleep and the REM sleep. Like a deep sleep really is, I feel like it's resting from what just happened in the day, and the REM sleep is getting you ready for the next day. And the other thing that I look at, and tell me if I'm wrong or right, I look at my resting heart rate overnight, and the minimum, I get down to about 39, 38. And then days where it alerts me is when I'm in the mid 40s. And I'm assuming 38 is like I'm almost dying. People are always, I get that when I've gone into surgeries and stuff. They're like, your resting heart rate, we thought you were we needed to revitalize you.
That's all that running.
I guess so. But is there something to, I mean, so we say the Aura Ring, but what metrics should I be looking at? So I look at the percentage I get of deep sleep, REM sleep, and my resting heart rate. Is there anything else that matters?
Not in my book. However, I do have a podcast guest that I would recommend for you. And I can give you her info. I'll just go ahead and give her a plug.
All right, do
a
it.
shout out.
Molly McLaughlin, her podcast is Sleep is a Skill. And just like I dive into the nutrition and the exercise piece of it super deep, she dives into the sleep piece of it super deep.
I've gone down those rabbit holes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is super. I think, honestly, when I started thinking about sleep, I did become healthier because I would notice when stress was affecting me. Probably my sleep, the biggest thing for me is when I have major deadlines and I wake up 18 times thinking about those deadlines.
Oh, yeah.
And so then it became, well, I'm just going to get all that work done way in advance so that I don't have a bad night's sleep.
Yeah.
And my gosh, it worked.
Yeah.
It was done. It was so nice. I've got a major deadline on Wednesday coming up here. It's probably going to affect my sleep, you know, because I'm just not catching up. And because I instead went to my son's baseball game and did the right thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to make choices like that.
Yeah, you do.
That's right.
And with that, I would recommend, what if you pretended that you said the deadline's on Wednesday? What if you pretended the deadline was on Tuesday to make you push a little bit harder toward the beginning, but your subconscious knows that it's really not until Wednesday, to see if that gets you a little bit faster getting it done. And then what else can you do? The biggest thing is, what else can you do to support yourself during that time? If I know I'm going to struggle with that, what else needs to happen? Let me just ask, what else could support you during that?
Yeah, I think what works for me the best is that I've chunked it.
Okay.
I'm going to get this. I've got to create a document. I've got to create a presentation, and I've got to create videos. I'm going to nail that. The document's going to get done today because I can't finish the presentation until the document's done. And if I do that, I feel good. I did that yesterday, and so finished it. And now I'm like, okay, all I got to do is finish the presentation today. That's it. And when I'm done, I'm going to go do something else. But I'm going to get it done after recording, of course. Like, I don't feel guilty being at recording today. You know, that's a big deal. And then once it's like, then all I have to do is on Sunday do videos. That's it. That's easy. And that's the way I'm thinking. I don't expect, honestly, to be working Monday and Tuesday on this.
Oh, okay. Well,
and so
no big deal.
I'm hoping.
So if that's the case, you're not going to need physiological supports for it. You're already going to have
I hope
solved.
so. I've gotten good at that because I do put too much work on myself, but I get a lot of sleep. I do. I don't miss my sleep.
I'll take an angle on that. So in the same vein, like, preparing helps me reduce my stress. And so I learned pretty early on that facing the issue, like journaling about it and things like that, it reduced stress quite a lot. But if I've got a deadline, I have to plan out, like, okay, here's what I'm doing tomorrow, here's what I'm doing the next day, and then here's how it's going, and I'll do it in a way that I know that I'll do, which means smaller chunks. Like, I don't do big chunks at one time. But when I do that, and when I've captured it and I've written down exactly how I'm gonna do it, then it's up to me to step away from that, and knowing that it's written down allows me to, and so I can alleviate the stress. But if I had to learn that the hard way, because I've been the person who had something, like, for me, like public speaking, or like when I draw a line in the sand, because I run a business and whatnot. So when I draw a line in the sand and I tell the customer, partner, whoever it is, like, you need to do this by this date, I can't write my way out of that.
Yeah.
And so that's an experience I've got to go through. But knowing the outcome does help some, but it doesn't stop me from waking up at 4 a.m. and the second the thought pops into my head, I don't get sleep anymore.
Yeah, no, that is true. And I know we could probably, again, like go for another hour and a half on sleep or stress for sure. We'll go back to nutrition and kind of wrap things up. The last two things, I want to give you an opportunity to give us some of your helpful pointers on eating healthy. And I want to make sure that you tell us what you're doing these days and how we can reach you. So to make sure we don't forget that as well. But what are some final thoughts on if people were sitting there today saying, I want to be a little healthier, and we're not talking about changing everything, and we're on a data podcast, so we want to use some of that data to help us eat healthier. What would be some ways to do that?
So one of the biggest tips we've already talked about, and that is eat a rainbow.
Yeah.
Variety is trusting that your body will give you the data that you need to hear. And that's one of the things with the diet mentality is you completely lose all trust in your body. You completely put your trust in whatever somebody else's diet prescription is.
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. But when you say, no, my body was designed to tell me the data, what it needs, it will tell you that. Water, the trick of that is start drinking in the mornings. And if you're thinking of, I want to drink throughout the day and I'm having trouble remembering doing that, I've had two things that have worked really well for clients. One is they set timers. So just like you have an Apple Watch or a timer go off to tell you that you've been recording a podcast and you need to get up and move, same thing with, you can have timers set to remind you to drink water. Or I like numbers. So a baseline for me is 4 by 12 and 4 by 6. So at least 4 cups by noon and at least 4 cups by 6 p.m.
Okay.
In a cup, you mean 8 ounces?
8 ounces, yeah.
Okay.
And then it was really funny what came up for a client. She had been really good about drinking her water, and she got tired of her water bottles. So she got some new water bottles, and they were colored like yours, Charlie. And she noticed at the end of the day, she wasn't having drunk her water because she no longer had a visual reminder.
Oh, that's a good point.
Because her water bottles had always been clear. So she chucked those, went back and got clear water bottles. And she's like, I'm, drinking 8, 12, whatever cups a day again.
That's interesting. Color, you mentioned reflection basically is the best way to do things. And then of course, water, but basically let your eyes help you eat.
That's a good phrase. Let your eyes help you eat. I like that.
Is what we've really talked about. That idea of reflection too. I think it's almost like we need people to stop thinking about MyFitnessPal as the answer. Like to me, that usually makes me eat more.
Yes. 100%.
Because all I'm doing is thinking about eating now all day long. And the opportunity to reflect, I think, is so much better. Just what did you eat and how'd you feel? You can't capture that in a calorie app.
Right.
All you're capturing is calories.
Right.
And it sounds like you should stay away from that. I love that you're not using, you should hit this number of macros today. You should hit this number of calories. You need to do this. You need to do that.
I will tell you one number though, and circle back around to the broccoli. We'll tell you a couple of studies that just so jumped out. When I was at Vanderbilt Medical Center, one of the studies that was run at that time was on skin cancer. And they found that 8 vegetable servings, or was 8 vegetable and fruit. So maybe in leaning toward the vegetable, maybe 7 vegetables and 1 fruit serving a day, was able to reverse some of the skin cancer that people had.
Okay.
So just basically flooding your body with those micronutrients that we were talking about. The other number or the other vegetable to kind of hit on the broccoli was colon cancer. They saw great results as people began to eat more broccoli, cauliflower, those types of things.
Interesting.
So it's you eat a variety. It's not just green leafy vegetables. It's everything.
Yeah. Some people go a little too far with that. So Steve Jobs famously perished because he went on this specific diet that was all vegetables and fruits and stuff like that rather than seeking medical help. And if he would
go like a month of eating just carrots.
He would. Yeah. That's what I'm saying though. He went off of somebody's recommendation on what to do, and he drove his body into the ground at a very pivotal time.
Yeah. Well, it's all about what do we do with that data. It's like I've said okay, the study from Vanderbilt showed this. That's in a study that's an aggregate amount of data from a group of people. Your body might need more, your body might need less, but the general data push of that is eat a wide variety of vegetables. And it's also, the data is not saying don't go see your doctor. It's saying if you've seen your doctor, this is one of the things you can take personal responsibility with to do that.
Well, I think he was listening to a guru at the time. I don't think he was. Like there's a lot of woo in nutrition, just like there is in sports medicine and holistic medicine and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, Sheri, there's ways that we can see you either on YouTube channels, or you do have your own podcast.
Yes, I have my podcast.
And your own, and we can go to your website as well. Tell us what those are.
Okay. So the YouTube channel is, and I'm going to have to spell this out for you all, is Vireo Life, Vireo Life. And Vireo means I flourish, I thrive, I'm strong and active.
So it's a derivative of virulent?
That I don't know. Not a clue. You got me there. I'll have to look that up.
We'll also have links in the description.
Super.
Yeah, for sure.
And my podcast is Real Wellness. And if anybody, if you've got questions on some of the things that you've heard us talk about today, if you want some of the research things, because it's one thing to throw out numbers, but you actually want some of the research from it, I'll be glad to hook people up with that. And you can just email me, Sheri@thevireolife.com.
Okay. And who would be the normal client?
Normal client is busy men and women, typically busy professionals who they're noticing, like you were talking about, Charlie, okay, I'm hitting 45, I'm hitting 50, I'm hitting, somewhere in there of, I want to take better care of my brain. I want to be able to function over the next 10 years even better than I have been functioning. Or people who have struggled with the diet mentality and want to get out of that.
So it sounds like everybody that gets to that point, and hopefully they get enlightened that they want to help themselves.
Yeah. Everybody who's gotten too busy to treat their bodies right, or their body and their well-being.
So I might be giving you a call.
Okay, there we go.
Very much so.
And I do have, I mentioned a graphic, a powerful plate graphic, and it's what I call an intuitive eating starter pack. It's just some documents of some graphics. It's a graphic on dieting versus intuitive eating. So if people want to begin to think about, okay, what are the benefits of making this switch? Some of the journal worksheets, I've got that packet and I can just email it to anybody who wants it. You can just email me and I'll get it to you.
Great. Charlie, we're at that time knowing that when we have somebody on this good, it's going to be one of our longer episodes, but this is probably not our longest, but we're getting close to that time.
Yeah.
Any parting shots or anything you'd like to add?
Thanks for coming out, for sure. Like, it's always good to talk to people who are focused on this, because nutrition is like an ever-changing landscape. And so somebody that pays attention constantly is always helpful. So thanks for that. But in the future, I do want to have you back so we can talk about stress, burnout, and how to recoup from that, because that's
for sure.
That's something that we were talking earlier about, helping people learn lessons not the hard way. Rebounding from burnout is doable, but you've got to have a plan.
I've had adrenal fatigue twice. I can relate to that.
Same.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that what we did today is not dive into the numbers, but we dived into the different aspects of data that matter the most, that you can capture all day long, which goes again to the color of your food, the way that you feel, more of a reflection, and the simple things, like we can all understand how much water we drink. So
when I go, like with the GPT meal planning, I'm going to say, make me a meal plan that includes the rainbow, basically.
There you go.
I love it.
Yeah, we've been talking about how we meal plan with Chat GPT now, and we could do that, and you got to watch it. It's still a little bit simplistic. Like I put in for just vegetarian stuff, and it gives me just the plain Jane stuff still, but it's obviously gonna get better at that. So, Sheri, we'd love for you to end us. Any parting shots on your
end? Just go do this, and don't beat yourself up when you don't do it the way you think you should.
It's good advice.
Excellent advice. Thank you again, Sheri. This has been an absolute pleasure. Obviously, you can tell we really like this topic. Can't thank you enough for
My
coming
pleasure.
in. Charlie, anything else?
That's it.
That's it. So thank you all for listening to this week's Data for All podcast, Data in Nutrition. If you like what you heard, and obviously you do because Sheri's a fantastic guest, please make sure you find us on dataforall.io, and please subscribe on your favorite player. And with that, I always want to just go back to Charlie again, because at the last episode, I think I said, and Charlie, anything else 3 times.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I didn't. I only said it twice. Then I went back and listened, and I think I said it 4 times.
Oh, my word.
So I was really bad. So I'm going to ask you, Charlie. So for everybody out there, I'm Charlie Apigian.
And I'm Charlie Yielding.
And until next time.